For a long time, I believed that if you work hard, get a stable job, and you slowly earn more money over time, that eventually life becomes financially secure. And on the surface, that seems perfectly logical. A steady salary, a nice home, a car in the driveway, maybe a vacation once or twice a year. From the outside, that looks like stability. But what many of us don't realize is that this exact situation can slowly turn into something that quietly keeps people financially stuck for decades. Many of us don't even realize we are part of it. And that's why it's often referred to as the middle class trap. Hi, my name is Becky, and welcome to the channel where we talk about money and the real life journey of trying to build financial stability and long-term wealth. This is actually the second video in our series about money realities people rarely talk about. In the first video, we looked at why so many lottery winners end up losing their money. And if you haven't seen that one yet, I'll link it somewhere because it really sets the stage for what we are going to talk about today. Because the mistake that destroys many lottery fortunes is also the exact same mistake that quietly traps millions of everyday people. And that brings us to today's topic, the invisible middle class trap. The middle class trap almost never begins with bad decisions. In fact, it usually begins with quite the opposite. A stable job, a steady salary, the decision to work hard, build a career, and slowly improve your life over time. Now, that path makes perfect sense in so many ways, right? Because from a young age, most of us are taught the same formula. Study hard, find a good job, work your way up, and eventually life will become financially comfortable. And for a while, that formula often seems to work quite well. Your first steady paycheck arrives. It might not be a huge amount yet, but it feels like progress. And slowly your lifestyle starts growing alongside your income. A slightly nicer apartment, maybe a car instead of public transportation, furniture that isn't secondhand anymore, and none of these changes are unreasonable. In fact, they often feel like the natural reward for working hard. But this is also the moment where something subtle begins to happen. While your income is slowly increasing, the expenses are also increasing alongside it. A bigger home usually means a bigger mortgage. A nicer car often means bigger monthly payments. A slightly more comfortable lifestyle often brings new recurring expenses that didn't exist before. Streaming services, insurance upgrades, dining out more often. And none of these things feel big on their own, but together they begin to shape a financial structure that quietly depends on your next paycheck arriving on time. So from the outside, life may look stable. A job, a home, a car. But underneath that stability, the system carrying it is often surprisingly fragile. Because your lifestyle is now supported almost entirely by active income. If the salary continues, everything works. But if the salary suddenly stops, the entire system can become wobbly very quickly. Isn't that interesting? Because most of us believe that the solution to financial pressure is simply earning more money. And that just seems perfectly logical if you ask me, because if money is tight, then earning more of it should solve the problem, right? So we start to focus on promotions, better paying jobs with higher salaries, and sometimes these things do happen. We get a raise at work, a better position, a salary that slowly grows over time. And for a brief moment, it really does feel like things are improving. There's a little more room in our budget. Maybe your bank account looks slightly healthier at the end of the month. But very often, that feeling doesn't last as long as we expect. Because along with our paycheck, something else quietly grows at the same time: your lifestyle. When income increases, life slowly adjusts to a new level of comfort. A nicer place to live, a newer car, better schools, more convenient services. And none of these decisions are necessarily bad. In fact, they feel like perfectly reasonable upgrades after years of work. But together, they create a system where your higher income is now required just to maintain your new lifestyle. Your raise that first felt like extra breathing room slowly becomes part of your normal budget. And once that happens, your higher income no longer creates more freedom. It simply supports a more expensive version of the same life. And this is one of the reasons why so many of us who earn more money over time still feel financially stuck. Because your whole financial system still depends almost entirely on active income. Your paycheck arrives, bills are paid, life continues. But very little of your money is actually building something that could eventually replace the paycheck itself. Which means the system remains dependent on one thing above all else: you. Having to continue to work, you having to trade your time for money. And now something is becoming very clear, because there is a big difference between earning money and building wealth. And many of us grow up believing those two are the same thing. We believe that if our income continues to grow over time, financial stability will eventually follow. But in reality, those two things don't always move in the same direction. Your income can grow for years, while your financial stability barely changes. And the reason for that is surprisingly simple. Income is money that passes through your life. It arrives in your account and then it continues on its way to rent, food, insurances, taxes, subscriptions, and all the other expenses that come with everyday life. Wealth, on the other hand, is something very different. Wealth is the money that stays. It's the part of your income that doesn't get consumed by your lifestyle. It's the part that gets invested, saved, and slowly begins to grow over time. And this is where the middle class trap quietly forms for many of us. Because as income grows, lifestyle often grows with it. But when lifestyle grows just as quickly as income, something very important never gets the chance to happen. Your capital never begins to build. And without capital, your money can never start working for you. Which means your entire financial system will forever continue to rely on your ability to keep working. And that's why one of the most important financial skills we can learn is surprisingly simple. Learning how to live below your means. learning to live below our means instead of slowly drifting above them. Because if we're being honest, and I know this is slightly uncomfortable, many of us slowly drift into a situation where we start living above our means. And I'm not even talking about the obvious extravagant way. Most of us aren't driving luxury cars or living in giant mansions. And I can almost hear you think, but we don't live extravagantly. We're actually quite reasonable. We don't buy crazy things. And in many cases, that is completely true. The middle class trap rarely comes from wild spending. But if there is nothing left at the end of the month to save or invest, then by definition, you are living above your means. Because living within your means doesn't simply mean paying your bills, it means your income leaves room for the future. Room to save, room to invest, room to slowly build the capital that can eventually grow its own income and support your life. And the moment that begins to happen, something really powerful changes. Because at that point, your life is no longer supported by your income alone. It slowly begins to be supported by the system you have built around your income. And this is the difference between a life that always depends on the next paycheck and a life that slowly becomes financially stable over time. In the end, financial stability isn't built by how much money passes through your life, but by how much of it you manage to keep working for you. Now, when you step back and look at all of this, you can clearly see the middle class trap rarely happens because people are reckless with money. In most cases, it happens to people who are actually doing the right thing. People who work hard, people who try to build a stable life, people who slowly improve their situation over time. But the real financial stability never seems to appear. And that's why learning to live slightly below your means can be such a powerful shift. Because that small gap between what you earn and what you spend is exactly where your future stability begins to grow. That's where savings appear. That's where investment begins. And that's where the capital slowly starts forming that eventually can support your life instead of the other way around. But as we've seen today, simply earning more money doesn't automatically solve the problem. In fact, raises often change surprisingly little. And in the next video in this series, we're going to look much deeper into why that happens, and more importantly, what you can do to actually change the outcome. Because once you understand why raises rarely change your life, you also begin to see what people do differently when they slowly start escaping the middle class trap. So if you are interested in that, make sure you stick around for the next video. And if you enjoy these kinds of honest conversations about money and life, feel free to subscribe to the channel and don't forget to click the notification bell. I really appreciate you spending your time here with me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.